Welcome back to Mike's Monsters. A fresh new arrival from Super7 has stomped its way onto my doorstep, the Godzilla Minus One Charging Version Ultimates figure. I pre-ordered this bad boy the moment orders went live on Super7's website during the Godzilla Day celebrations, and I've been eager to get my hands on it ever since. I decided to skip the standard original and minus color releases of the figure, since I already had the SH Monster Arts version, and the minus color version, it just personally didn't appeal to me. This one has had me counting down the days since it was first revealed. It's also my first ever Godzilla Ultimates figure from Super7, and let me tell you, it's an absolute banger. Let's start by taking a look at the incredible packaging. The Super7 team really knows how to create stunning presentation with their figures. The boxes and artworks are always next level. I love the render of Godzilla from Minus One peering into the front window of the box, which looks like it was shattered out of a wall or something. On top of the box, there's also a window shaped like a crack, which is also a really nice touch. And of course, the bottom of the box features all of the legal text along with some basic information about Super7. But let's unleash Godzilla from his cardboard prison. I didn't film the process, but getting him out of the plastic inside of the box was a bit of work. He's very large and his spines are quite sharp, so I recommend being careful to avoid scratching yourself or damaging the spines in the process of removing him from the package. I'm glad they packaged him so securely though. I did notice a few of the spines on mine were slightly bent out of place once I got him out, but a quick heat treatment got them back into shape with no issue. Now that Godzilla's out of the box, we can just see how impressive this sculpt is. Super7 was able to use the film's 3D data to create a figure that's extremely close to what we see in the movie, from the detailed skin texture to the menacing facial expressions. He stands at about 8.4 inches tall, and from toe to tail he measures about 14.2 inches long. He's a very massive figure. If you've seen other reviews of this figure, you already know basically how it moves and stuff, but the standout feature of this version is the new glow-in-the-dark, vibrant blue spines that extend out of his back just before releasing his atomic blast on Ginza in the iconic scene from the film. If you have previous versions of this figure, this release is actually a different sculpt due to the new style of spines being raised out of his back and tail. And I can confidently say they look awesome. We'll take a closer look at them in detail later in the video. This figure is extremely impressive, and for a first Godzilla Ultimates figure, I can say I'm definitely a fan. This definitely won't be my last Super7 Ultimates figure. I really love this guy. Let's get this figure moving and take a closer look at the articulation, the details, paint, and sculpt. As we jump into the details and movement, I want to take note that I have about 4 very bright lights shining on this figure, which makes him look extremely glossy. In standard home lighting or natural light, it's not nearly as shiny to the eye. When I was filming this segment, I was surprised with how glossy it looked on camera, because in person right there, it didn't appear that way. There are a lot of complaints about Super7's figures being overly glossy, but I think this is often due to photography that doesn't accurately represent the figure and can mislead viewers, whether intentional or not. Let's check out the articulation of this beast of a figure. The head can look down about this far and up about that far. It can look side to side or even do a full 360 if you want some Exorcist Regan action with your Godzilla, if that's your thing. The neck sculpt is different this time around on this Ultimates figure. While I don't have any of the previous Ultimates of the Godzilla line, I've seen that the older necks have a bit of a turtleneck sweatshirt vibe. Here they've updated the neck to allow the head to sit on top of it, resulting in a much more seamless design. The neck itself seems to be on a ball joint or some kind of joint that allows for a sliding motion. It's got a pretty good tilt forward, backward, and side to side, which helps add to the range of motion for the head, like looking down even further. The arms can go out to about a T pose and can fold back down pretty tightly into the body. There's a full 360 swivel at the shoulder and a solid bend at the elbow. There's also a swivel at the bicep, allowing for full 360 rotation, as well as swivel at the forearm with the same range. The wrist has a full 360 degree turn and a good bend as well. The torso has a nice forward bend, allowing Godzilla to hunch over a bit more. And there's a full 360 spin at the torso cut. However, twisting too far breaks the illusion of the seamless spines, exposing a little bit of a smoother texture that aren't really meant to be that visible. There is a word of caution though. Be mindful of the spines colliding when twisting and turning the torso. Too much pressure could cause them to break, so tilt carefully before any dramatic turns to avoid any collisions. The leg can kick forward from the hip joint and extend backward about this far. There's a good bend at the knee and a full 360 swivel on the calf. The ankle also has a decent bend with a rocker that allows the feet to tilt from side to side. The hips also have a bit of an outward range, giving Godzilla a nice spread for something like a sumo pose. Where the tail connects to the body, you can get a full 360 spin. I will say I had to heat up the joint and the connector socket to attach the tail. It was kind of tough, but once I got the plastic softened just right and connected, it popped in nice and snug. It was a bit of a challenge to do though because of the very spiky spines that I didn't want to break and they were stabbing my hand. So getting a grip and shoving the tail in was quite difficult. But now that it's connected, it's secure. It doesn't have the largest range of motion from side to side at the point where the tail connects to the body, but there is some movement left and right. I'd heard that previous Super 7 Godzilla Ultimates releases didn't have the most flexible of tails, but this one seems to have a lot of range of motion than the earlier versions, so there were improvements made. It can pose up and down, left and right with ease at multiple angles. Again, just watch out for those spine collisions so you don't accidentally break any of them when posing the tail. But I really dig the tail on this guy. It might not be as posable as something like an SH Monster Arts, but this is a different kind of collectible, and you can't expect them to have the same level of articulation. I'm quite impressed with the range that it has though, plus it holds the poses really, really well. The joints in the tail are nice and strong too. Really all of the joints in this figure are tight and sturdy. Now let's swap out the head for the alternate face, which has a much more neutral pose. You'll see here that I actually had quite a bit of difficulty popping on the alternate head. I had to stop the recording briefly and heat up the figure with my girlfriend's hairdryer for a few minutes, plus the spikes on the guy's head were pretty sharp, which added to the challenge of swapping them. But once I gave it some heat treatment, it snapped on with no problems, just like the tail. The alternate head is really nice, but I personally dig the roaring face the most. That's probably going to be the one I'll display my figure with on my -1 shelf. That said, the neutral head is still very menacing. Let's take a look at the details on this figure, especially those awesome spines. Godzilla's skin features a very dark color with a brown dry brushing to highlight and bring out the details throughout the body. Once again, to my eye and not the camera, this figure doesn't look nearly as glossy or shiny. The glow-in-the-dark blue spines look incredible. I love that they gave us this version with the spines rising out of his back, just like in the movie before he lets his atomic blast loose on the city. It was such a cool addition to the Godzilla mythos, and it was awesome to have it here in figure form. The spines are sculpted so well, and you'll notice a lighter blue paint just below the spines, giving the effect of light spilling onto the skin of his back and tail. The details start at the very top of the neck and go all the way down to the very tip of his tail. The spines also have a little bit of a dark blue wash in certain spots, which mimics the darker areas when the spines light up in the movie. I really, really love the spines on this figure. They are absolutely the highlight, no pun intended, of the whole package. Popping the roaring head back on, you can also see that the inside of his mouth, along with the tongue, uses the same glow-in-the-dark material. And the neutral head you can see has some blue detailing inside of the mouth as well. You can see here when they're side to side that the roaring head's eyes are painted on to look a little bit to the left instead of straight forward. I know this might bug some people, but this is one that really doesn't bother me at all, especially since I only notice that when I'm looking at the figure straight on, and I won't even be seeing that when it's displayed on my shelf. The team at Super 7 really did kill it with the sculpt and paint application on this figure in my opinion. One minor hiccup like that is not something that's a deal breaker for me. Let's now take a look at that glowing feature. Using my UV powered flashlight, which is basically a portable blacklight, helps supercharge the glowing feature on the figure so I don't have to leave it out under light for it to charge for a while. It really shows off the bright and vibrant glow on this guy, and seriously, this figure glows so bright. Possibly brighter than any of my other glow-in-the-dark pieces in my collection. I love this feature so much. I'm a sucker for glow-in-the-dark figures, and this one absolutely stole my heart with these glowing spines and mouth. The glow also holds up for a while too. Here's a quick time lapse sped up showing about 3 minutes of glow time before it starts to fade out. One thing about my figure though, and I'm not sure if it's the same across the board, is that my alternate neutral head doesn't seem to have the glow in the mouth no matter how much UV or standard light I blast it with. I'm kind of bummed that I'm having this problem, but again, I don't know if it's isolated to just my figure, but it's also not a deal breaker for me. Like I said, I'm planning on displaying this figure with the roaring head most of the time. If you've got this version, let me know in the comments if your neutral head doesn't glow either. One last thing about these awesome spines before we move on is that they also have some transparency to them as well, so they don't just glow, they light up when the light hits them just right. I always love that feature on my figures. You might also be wondering why it doesn't come with an atomic breath piece, accessory or something like that, and I can tell you exactly why. Licensing. Toho does not allow this version of the figure to come with any atomic breath pieces. And what I mean by that is that this version of Godzilla Minus One with his spines ejected cannot come with that accessory. Why? Because that's not accurate to the movie's design. He can't fire his atomic blast with his spines out like this. Only once they shoot back into his body can it come with that effect. That is why the SH Monster Arts Atomic Breath version doesn't have the blue spines ejected out, but they are just a transparent blue. You might not agree with that or like that fact, but it is indeed a fact and accurate to the film. And I know how much Godzilla collectors like accuracy in their figures. Now it's time for some size comparison with other figures in my collection. Starting off, we'll look at him next to the SH Monster Arts Godzilla Minus One, and you can see how much more of the Super 7 towers over the figure compared to the Monster Arts. These figures are aimed at a very different customer base, so they really aren't something to compare directly, but I do like seeing the difference in size and scale overall with these. Both are awesome for what they are, and I love that both use the 3D data to get a quite accurate representation of the character. It's so cool that we have all these different options in this day and age. And for another Minus One comparison, here is the Banpresto Super Deformed Minus One, who is just a cute little chonker. Up next, we have the Hiya Toys Godzilla vs. Kong Atomic Blast Godzilla, which is still shorter than the Minus One, and it's a larger scale than SH Monster Arts. And with him, we have the new Godzilla Evolved from SH Monster Arts here as well. For some more little guys, we have the Mezco Destroy All Monsters Godzilla from those two sets that came out a couple years ago, and the Funko Pop Godzilla 1984. Here is the Mondo Godzilla 1984 Umi variant. And for some Super 7 Ultimates comparisons, here is the Dragon Zord from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Slash from the TMNT line. These are all very big and very beefy figures. And last but not least in the comparison, we have some reaction figures with King Caesar and the new Victory Pose Godzilla doing his She dance. But now let's take some pictures of this bad boy. First up, I really liked that pink ocean background I used earlier in the video, so I lit Godzilla with a Lume Cube paired with a reddish-orange filter and a Ulanzi RGB LED video light to set a light blue color accent. I then used my UV light to make his spines and mouth glow, then captured a few different exposures and then combined them into one shot. I think this one turned out pretty cool. Next, I wanted to create a moody, foggy look with a red, almost evil color scheme. I set the Ulanzi LED to red and used my Ulanzi Film Fog Ace to bring in some foggy atmosphere. I hit the spines and mouth again with the UV light and combined those exposures again to get this final shot. From the next photo, I drew inspiration from the Ginza Atomic Blast scene. I found an image of a mushroom cloud and displayed it on my TV as a background. I used some iPop Designs buildings to create a city around Godzilla and lit the scene with the Ulanzi LED from behind and brought in the UV flashlight to make his spines and mouth pop. The result is this shot, which I think captures the iconic energy perfectly. Finally, I took Godzilla outside on my apartment patio where the sunlight was hitting him just right. I used the spray water bottle to mist him with a few sprays, which created a dramatic and dynamic shot. I'm super happy with all these photos, but I want to hear from you. Which is your favorite of the bunch? I really love this figure. It impressed me more than I expected, and I'm excited to have him as the centerpiece of my Godzilla Minus One shelf. He's a perfect fit. If I had any complaints or critiques, it would be that the tail and the alternate head were pretty tough to attach, and the neutral head didn't seem to want to glow for me. I'd also love to see head sculpt with hinged jaws, which is I know something a lot of other collectors have brought up in the Godzilla line, but it would be nice not to have to swap heads on the figures. With the Super Kaiju figures already featuring that, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw hinged jaws in future releases. But honestly, that's it. I really dig this figure. As my first Ultimates Godzilla figure, it's definitely not going to be my last. The Godzilla Minus One charging version is available for $85 on Super7's website, and just a heads up though, he may sell out. If you want to grab him and support this channel while you're at it, you can use my affiliate link in the description below to pick him up. Did you pre-order this guy like I did? And if so, what do you think? Do you have any of the other versions? And if you don't have any yet, are you planning on adding one to your collection? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Super7 really kicked butt with this release. Brian Flynn, Kyle Wadaga, and the rest of the Super7 team are putting out awesome and really fun figures, and I cannot wait to see what's coming next for the Godzilla line. Thank you so much for watching Mike's Monsters. I really appreciate having you here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.